action, misdirection sets the stage to turn the page. At the raising of the curtain, I am hurting and uncertain of the parts we have played. Why must the show go on? I can't say these lines again. Why must the show go on? Must I sing this song again? Fading out of the close-up, everybody's reeling, no concealing. Your beauty is seed stealing. Violins are singing, sunset's waiting, radiating. Your entrance is breathtaking. Why must the show go on? I can't say these lines again. Why must the show go on? Must I sing this song again?
Hello, everybody. My name is Sunday Roundtable, episode 31. Got another great show tonight. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Hopefully, everybody had a great week. Me personally, I saw, I don't know, that. Dang. Oh, I'm back.
You froze. This keeps happening. 31 episodes in. Yeah. Can you hear us, Drew?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hi. I'm not sure anyone heard what you were saying. Give it another shot. Take two.
Well, I just was saying, hopefully everybody had a good week. I saw a ton of bipartisan Bernie memes.
Right.
So that was kind of fun to see. I mean, I saw everybody put one up. So that was kind of cool.
Yep.
I got off my spiel. Usually I say, and I'm once again joined by my co-host Jeff.
I know.
But you're
Instead,
already here.
I thought we were over this whole thing of us breaking StreamYard at the beginning of our show. It's what's crazy is that it's fine for the next 55 minutes. Yeah. But here we are. What we need is a good production manager. I'll get to that.
Yes.
The Bernie memes. My wife grew up in Vermont, in Burlington, where Bernie was the mayor at the beginning of his political career. So she's loving the mittens and the memes. And her reaction as a good Vermonter has been, yes, that's exactly right. When it's cold outside, you dress for it. You wear the mittens and the Gore-Tex parka. There's absolutely, that's exactly as it should be. Drew, in the last time we met, when last we were here, you and I think your entire family had COVID. Yeah. You're still here. How's everyone doing?
We're doing good. Kids are doing good. My taste is almost there, but it's not fully there. My mom's not in the hospital; she's home.
Great.
So it's really good. And yeah, so everybody's recovering, thankfully.
So happy to hear that. I'm sure everybody's happy to hear that. We haven't seen baby pictures in a while, so
I inserted one here. There's my son. He's going to be 5 months on the 27th. And my daughter, who's going to be 5 next December. So it's crazy how fast he's a COVID baby.
Yeah, it is.
And
crazy.
He had COVID, so.
Yeah. God, geez. Well, I'm glad everyone's okay and that you're tasting things again.
Yeah.
And that's nice. And also Tom Brady's back in the Super Bowl, so anything is possible. I'm not even really sure what to make of this, but
I'll keep as a Raider fan, I have no comment.
All right. Yeah. I have no comment either as a Giants fan. I mean, how can I? What can I say?
Yeah, sure.
Before we start, one quick plug for the Hal Binkley Fellowship Program. I'm going to read something that they sent me. The Hal Binkley Fellowship offers an individual exposure to New York City-based lighting designers and the theatrical lighting community. It will expose them to the worlds of commercial and nonprofit lighting design. The fellowship recipient will have direct access to Hal's two key associates of many years, Ryan O'Gara and Amanda Zeev. Ryan and Amanda will provide an inside look into the industry, including developing excellent drafting technique, advice on finding the next job, observing the tech of a regional, opera, dance, or Broadway production, and experience at the tech table for the process of a show. The deadline for submission is March 1st, and I think this is an amazing thing. And if you're interested in moving to New York, absolutely apply.
And I added the link in the comment section, so if you want to check it out, the link is in the comment section for everybody watching.
All right, let's get to our distinguished panel. As we've been saying for a while now, can't just turn a key and expect the car to start after letting it sit for 18 months. Our guests will share their insight into what has to happen before we can actually start up. Before we jump in to the pandemic and what happens next, let's start by talking to them about what production managers, technical supervisors, producing managers, other than, as I said many times, lower my blood pressure, what they actually do, which we could have used at the beginning of the show tonight, at least the good ones. And we have some great ones with us. Let's bring them in, Drew.
All right. The first one, technical supervisor, Broadway technical supervisor at the Hudson part of the Hudson Theatrical associate, Sam Ellis. Hey, Sam.
Evening. How are we doing?
Doing good. Before I bring in the other guests, I just wanted to show Sam's contribution to the Bernie meme craze.
Actually, I got to give credit to Frank Swan, who did that and sent it to me yesterday. And there's a story behind me in a tuxedo in that particular spot, but we can get to that later.
We'll definitely get to that. Thanks, Sam. Next is Elisabeth Farwell-Moreland, producing director at the Seattle Rep. Hello, Elisabeth.
Hi, everybody. How are you?
Doing good. Thank you so much for joining. Next, the Lincoln Center, or the production manager at Lincoln Center Theater, Paul Smithyman. Did I get that, Paul?
You got that right, Drew.
Good job, America. Listen.
So before I go, what's the correct way? The non-American?
Well, where I'm from, you would say Smithyman.
Smithyman. Man,
Yep.
I could have done that. All right,
And
I'll do it next time.
you know the history of the name. I'm not even the blacksmith. I'm the blacksmith's man. So I was shoveling the poop and the coal, and that's what I was doing.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And last is the production manager at Disney Parks Live Entertainment, David S. Stewart. Hey, David, how you doing?
How's everybody doing tonight?
Doing good. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's get started.
Absolutely.
Okay, welcome. So there are people watching who may not know what your job actually entails. And there are so many different kinds of production managers, technical supervisors, and producing directors. This is our second production management episode. At the start of the first one, I actually read the Wikipedia definition, which is fairly basic, but not entirely inaccurate. I'm not going to do that this time, but if you have a minute of boredom, look it up. But our first question for our guests, and we're going to start with Sam. What is your definition of what you do? And just please tell us a little bit about where you do it.
I do everything that has to be done that no one else has done up to that point. Actually, most of the things that I do are on Broadway with Hudson Theatrical. So in a Broadway situation, for those that might not know it, when you walk into a theater, that's what you get. You get seats and you get four walls. So there's nothing there. So when the producer decides what the show is, he hires a general manager, and they, depending upon what level it's at, if it's gone through workshops or whatever stages, the general manager will hire a technical supervisor. And that's where we come in. We have relationships with many general managers, many producers, and there are a number of us that do exactly the same thing with many shows. Once the show is determined, we like to get a meeting together up front just to try to get everyone in the same book. It's impossible to get everyone on the same page, but we like to get everyone at least generally in the same book. And we sit down with our director, designers. We, by that time, bring in our production heads who we brought on to take care of each department, the electrician, the video, sound, props, wardrobe, all of these elements, all the technical elements of the show that at some point are going to shoehorn into that theater in a fixed amount of time. So in that meeting, we try to determine what everybody's needs are, and we set a schedule. We set a schedule that the designer needs to get the scenic designer needs to get us, his work on such and such a date, because oftentimes, imagine this, there might not be enough money to do what the vision of the designer is.
Can't imagine.
We get those designs, we end up making the changes that need to be made in the design. They make them, and we settle on that show. At which point lighting, sound, everybody else starts muscling in to get, their space. Everybody needs space. We supervise the building of the set. We do bids for lighting and for sound. We send out the packages for those and get those back, and those are adjusted according to what the budget is. And then, at the shop, various people need to go to the shops depending upon the complexities of the show. Certainly, the designer and assistants are always coming in. Electricians are coming in doing set electrics. The director may need to come. At times, the whole cast has to come because you've got some elements that are so complicated that it's better for them to see what it is before they show up, whether it be double turntables or any number of things flying by Ford. We, continue the meetings. We are pulling everything together. Cast usually goes into rehearsal around the time that we're getting ready to go into the theater. We need to make sure that we have whatever permits we need, whatever engineering we need. If there's any special engineering, if we're making changes to the theater, we need to bring in structural engineers. So all those elements, all the various technical things that have to come into play. We start loading into the theater by doing the basic work up front, spotting, getting everything up in the air, and then start loading in the show. And we adjust the order of how it's coming in with the various production people, the electrician, the props, etc. And our big drop dead day is cast on stage. That's a drop dead date as far as our schedule is concerned. And between going in and spotting the show and getting the cast on stage, we need to get everything ready. So it's a day to day of making sure that it's all in place. And then we move the cast into the theater, move everything that hasn't been there yet into the theater, because oftentimes props are over at rehearsal. And we start the technical process. And, every night there's production meetings, and every day we set our schedule according to, where we want to be, setting our benchmarks. And ultimately get into preview and get into production. And then once the show opens, our particular job takes on a complexion, because we leave the production electrician, production props, production carpenter, and everyone running the show while we go off to another project. But we're always on call, and we're always there to take care of anything that may need it. And it's kind of amazing because I haven't, actually thought about this in a year. So I remembered what we did.
Well, that was the most thorough answer that we've ever had on this show, I think, in 31. So I guess so my question now to everyone else is, what is different about, I think that's a very thorough answer. So let's go to Paul next, because you are adjacent to, you do Broadway shows, but a little bit differently than Sam. So what's different about how you work?
Yeah, I'm lucky in my mind.
You have more than seats.
Yeah, to work for one organization, and what's really great for my position is that I'm not dragged into other parts of producing. I'm really left to do the production management, and that is fundamentally turning ideas into physical things, physical spaces and physical objects, and a lot goes into that, of course. And Sam did quite the description there for us of of lots of nuts and bolts. And being part of a non-for-profit theatre that's there all the time, there are certain kinds of continuity of ideas and notions and stuff and people that is a little different from the Broadway show-to-show situation, which I kind of love. And Sam kind of said the thing that I say is that production manager gets to do the stuff that no one else wants to do.
Yeah.
Making difficult things happen, and living within the borders of the different departments, design departments. I spend a lot of time there. So when a lighting designer says, "Well, that's a prop," that's not when a costume designer's like, "That's a prop." No, that's lighting. There you go. I spend a lot of time.
That's right. You make dreams come true. You do. There's some production managers who kill dreams, but not. I know you don't, Paul. I've worked with you.
Well, I'm very fortunate to be given a mandate to make it happen.
Make dreams come true. Yeah. Elisabeth, let's go to you next. You are slightly different, and it's still theater, still the same sort of building, but a little bit different. What do you do?
Yeah. So as the producing director at the Rep. I started out there as the production stage manager and then became the production manager. And when they moved me into the producing director role, which is a different definition in every theater that has that title.
Yeah, true.
It really happened when our managing director, who had been there for 26 years, was starting to think about retiring and wanted to move some of the stuff off of his plate. So as producing director, I really started working more closely with Braden Abraham, our artistic director, or back then it was Jerry Manning, in picking the shows, sitting on season planning. We have everything within our theater. Our shops are on site and all of that. So, so I also took on from Ben, I started taking on doing our commission contracts, our co-pro contracts. So we don't have a general manager at Seattle Rep. So I sort of floated in this world of general management and production management. So sort of everything that was happening, with the production management, and also taking on a lot of the general management in terms of contracts. And luckily, as we moved forward and realized that it was really too much for one person, we did put in place another production manager, but I still oversee the entire production department. But I work very closely with Braden in sort of the artistic vision. So I sit in a lot of the design meetings. I sit in a lot of the rehearsals. I travel around the country to meet new designers. And so I really kind of have the best of both worlds. And I own the production budget as well. So I'm forecasting and doing all of that stuff. And then I was able to hand over a lot of the sort of day-to-day production management over to our production manager, San Hall, who really takes on all of, making sure that due dates are being met and scheduling design meetings and all of that kind of stuff. So I sort of have my foot in this great world of, I get to deal with all of the departments, marketing, communication, Devo, and it's exhausting, but it's great.
Sure.
It's
And
really,
you don't have to chase down designers for drawings anymore.
yeah. But I get to, when I talk to donors, they're like, well, what do you do? I'm like, well, I don't do any of the things that you see on stage, but I make sure they happen. I make sure that, like, I try to facilitate that and make sure that the designers and the directors sort of get their dream and their vision. And also we can do it within budget. So
you make dreams come true. David, who does something even more, you do make dreams come true. You work at Disney, who makes dreams come true.
That's right.
So can you tell us what you do?
I make dreams come true. As a production manager, I am part of the triumvirate on our team. So there's a producer, a production manager, and a production assistant. And there are 16 of those teams that work for Disney Parks Live Entertainment. And my job is part of the team with the we bounce from all over Disney. So we have 4 parks here in Orlando, 4 parks, 2 water parks, 4 cruise ships, and 3 more on the way. So we're all over the place. My job is primarily to make sure things come in on time, on budget, and within the scope design. And is one of my favorite professors at the University of Texas used to say, my job is to wisely disappoint, to bring folks along. As was stated earlier, one of the things I don't have to do is chase down designers. My designers are before COVID happened. My designers were literally just down the hallway. So that was really kind of great when it comes to collaboration. All of our designers are in-house, as are our directors. So I simply have to go around the corner to find my director to work with or my designer. So that makes it really nice. But when it comes to partnering with that, that's when everything kind of cascades exponentially for and I think we're going to talk about this a little bit later in terms of partnerships, so I won't get too deep into that. But my job is really to focus on the budget. 80% of my job is to manage those dollars and monitor cash flow and be responsible with the mouse's money.
And Paul, before we go on, Paul, I'm just going to say, because I think what you're saying is super important, and I want everybody to hear it. But is the audio okay for you, Jeff?
No, actually, David. Yeah, we're having a little trouble hearing you.
I would say let's just try to go. I'm going to remove you real quick. Just go remove the Bluetooth, and then we'll bring you back in here in a little bit.
You might have to, David. You might have to relog in to the.
And we'll just do non-Bluetooth, and we should be okay.
Yeah.
Once he comes back in, I'll add him in.
You probably have to close your browser and reopen it for it to work, but we won't miss a beat. Well, we've already missed a beat, but we won't miss more than a beat. Go ahead, Drew.
Yeah. So I'll go back to Paul for this one. How did you arrive to where you are now, and what were your steps and stops along the way?
Pure chance. Just lucky being in a place at a moment in time. I came to the United States from Britain back in 94, I think, or 3. And I started downtown. I lived on East 4th Street and 2nd Avenue. Great spot. Oh, I love living there. And there were 8 theaters on my block. So I spent one day unemployed, and I was kicked out of the apartment by my wife and said, go knock on a door. And I knocked on a door, and it was New York Theater Workshop. And funnily enough, they needed some help. So I got picked up straight away as TD for them. And so I worked several different places downtown, the old Berry Lane Theater, Cocktail, Theater in New City, lots of different.
Most of those places are gone now.
Pretty much. The NADA was a place I worked at as well. Mm-hmm. Crazy. And I was working at the American Jewish Theater, which was on 26th Street, which I think is Upright Citizens Brigade, or maybe even.
It was, yeah. I think they moved, but yes,
in the basement, and so it was
under the supermarket.
It was like 8 feet tall, and I was running lights, and there was a lighting designer from England. I've forgotten his name. Lovely guy. And all the lights were right above everyone's head. Anyway, I was running this show, and the company manager knew Mr. Peter Manning, who was working at Lincoln Center Theater. And they, with the arrival of Andre Bishop, things sort of picked up a bit, and they upped the ante, and there were a lot more shows. And my old partner in crime, Mr. Jeff Hamlin, needed help. And Andre Bishop, who is Peter Manning's their partners, asked Peter, said, "Do you know anyone?" And Peter was like, "Well, let me ask my friend." There you go. That was it.
And there it is.
I had an
There it is.
interview with Jeff, and I've been there ever since. I took a
Yeah.
little break in the middle, and Jeff and I worked together for nearly 19 years, and so obviously it worked.
Was it that long? 19 years.
Yeah, he and I
Wow.
19 years. I added up the show. It was like 200 shows or more. It's
That's
crazy.
incredible.
Yeah, and then I just went when he hung them up. I just carried on. I did work of my own during that time as well.
Yeah, we did some shows together.
Yeah.
In that while you were at Lincoln Center.
Once in a while, I would design a show outside of there, or help friends as a production manager. I wouldn't production manage any other shows. I kind of didn't want to. If I was going to
You
production,
had a home.
doing it where I wanted to do it.
Yeah.
That's great.
And I spent a bunch of time working with my partner in crime, Tim Haskell, as part of the Nightmare Haunted Houses. I would design those, and we put them together. That was so much fun. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Cool. Well, let me bring David back in. Hey, David.
Hello. Any better?
Okay. Yes.
Yes, it's better.
Sounds good.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Well,
We'll let you get settled.
yeah.
Go ahead, Drew.
I was gonna say I'll come back to you in a bit, David. But Elisabeth, if you can just tell us about how did you arrive to where you are now?
Yeah, I love Paul's answer because it was totally an accident, and every step of my career has been totally an accident. I moved to New York to be a dancer and an actress, and I came from a theatrical family, and immediately got injured when I moved to New York, and had no idea what I was going to do going forward. And a director that I had worked with in Cleveland called and said, "Hey, we're going to be doing Pacific Overtures at the York Theater off Broadway, and I'd like you to stage manage." And I had run the deck for him, and I was like, I've never called a cue in my life. And he said, "That's the easy part, but I need your knowledge and I need your skill." And I went in and I was like, this is everything I've ever wanted in the theater. So I was like, one's an accident, two's a career. Let's actually see if I can keep this going. And my career moved really swiftly in New York, and I ended up doing another off-Broadway show. I did Angry Housewives, and then I did some regional theater. And so my career as a stage manager was really what I was focusing on. And I ended up doing, did Secret Garden on Broadway and Aspects of Love. I don't know, I might have sent you a couple of pictures of those. I don't know. But back in the day, and like I moved there in '83. I ended up on the road with Phantom after that. I thought it's time to go out, take a show on the road. And I ended up out on Phantom for almost 14 years on and off. I took over as PSM, and then I became the advanced stage manager and would do all of the moves. And so I was working with Wasser office on all of what it took to move the show. And after a while, I was like, I want to start a family. I moved out here to Seattle and thought, well, I'd like to do a show at Seattle Rep. My dad had worked there in the 60s. I'm like, I just want to do one show. And then I'm going to leave the business. And I did one show. I finally got hired. Took a while. I did one show, and they said, can you do one more show? And can you be our PSM? And then about 2 years later, they said, our production manager is leaving. Can you be the interim? And again, I was like, I don't know what that is. They're like, yeah, you actually do. You've been doing it for the last 10 years. So I was like, sure, I'll do that as an interim, and then I'll go back to being production stage manager. And then they said, will you stay and will you become producing director? And here I am. So, so much of what we do in this business is about learning it on the job. And then, taking those jobs that you're not quite qualified. Every time I'm like, I don't know that I could do this. And then I'm doing it, and I have to go back and learn all the technical things that I had to figure out.
That's been such a popular sentiment on the show that just say yes. I mean, the idea of just saying yes to something and you'll ease into it somehow.
Right.
Also, I will say, go ahead, Drew.
I was gonna say, from lighting designers, or no matter what job or career path everybody's gone on this show, it's always been they've never started out doing where they are now. Seems to be another thing too.
if you'd had said to me as a 12-year-old in England, in Birmingham, said to me, "You're going to work in New York City, work in the heart of Broadway, or you're going to be an astronaut," I would have put my money on being an astronaut.
And I always said I didn't want to have anything to do with the money end of it. I just wanted to do the art, and that's all I do.
Here we are.
Yep. Well, Sam, tell us about how you got to where you are today.
Before I do, I just want to give a shout out to Artie Siccardi, who unfortunately passed away recently.
Thank you.
Without Artie Siccardi, the job of technical supervisor probably wouldn't exist to this day, because Artie was the king.
Yep.
And he'll be greatly missed.
I can still hear him yelling at lighting designers in my head.
Unlike the two of you, my path was very direct. I was cutting an organic chemistry class when I was in pre-dentistry in college, and someone came by and said, "Let's go try out for a play." So I tried out for the Fantastics and decided when I got the role that was going to be a lot more fun than looking in people's mouths for the rest of my life. So I kind of shifted my gears and showed up in New York after a couple of years in grad school, and showed up in New York back in the 60s. And I still wanted to be an actor, but I was building sets and I was, doing various other things, and stage management came into play. After a couple of years, I got my first Broadway show, which was a show called Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope, at the Edison Theater, which is now the Edison Ballroom, which used to be a theater. So I stage managed some shows, got involved in the music business, did some touring of the music business, and then, was a freelancer for many, many years doing production work and stage management work. And to get to where I am now, I got a call from Neil Mazzella about 16 years ago asking if I was interested in a job at Hudson Scenic Studio. I had to think a minute because it was a job. It was like a real job as opposed to a freelance thing. It was like I had to go to work, I had to get paid, I had to this, I had insurance, all those things. Thought about it for a couple of minutes and I said, sure, let's do it. I went up there as a project manager. And then when Young Frankenstein came along, Neil said, okay, we're going to really we had done, some one-offs as far as production management and tech supervision is concerned. And Neil says, we're going to do this. If you want to go to Seattle for 3 months with Young Frankenstein, we will be Hudson Theatrical Associates.
And that was born there.
Yeah, and that was it. Went out there, did that, and since then, came back and we've done many, many, many shows together. And right now we have a few shows just sitting there waiting to come back to life, as many of us do. And soon as we can, we'll get those back to life. We'll
more on that soon.
Yeah, we'll talk about that more for sure. David, tell us about how you got started.
Sure.
How'd you get to where you are now?
Absolutely. So I graduated Webster University back in the long time ago with a BFA in management. And I was fortunate, as soon as I graduated from Webster, Webster also houses the Repertory Theater of St. Louis. And the rep picked me up as equity stage manager. So I worked there for a number of years, got married. My wife and I moved to Buffalo, New York, where I was the stage manager and production stage manager for the Studio Arena Theater, and decided that I was tired of doing that summer hustle, trying to find work. I had done production stage management work for the Muni in St. Louis and Kansas City Starlight, as well as Galveston Island Outdoor Musicals and Little Theater on the Square, and then ended up as the production stage manager at the Theater Company in Minneapolis. Did that for about a year, hit a brick wall. I was like, I'm done with this. I don't want to do theater anymore. Tossed out all my production books. And my wife and I and our 2-year-old daughter moved to Champaign, Illinois, where my wife's parents' friends owned an information technology company. And I was a project manager, certified project manager, for them for a number of years. That business went under, and then people work again. I was like, what am I going to do in the middle of Central Illinois? I could either manage the family video, or I could learn how to grow corn. Either one of those sounded appealing. So I ended up going back into the theater, and I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where I was their production manager and headed up their stage program. And I did that for about 10 years. And in the interim, I ended up working with USITT, United States Institute for Theater Technology, doing a lot of work for them. And then what happened then? A friend of mine is like, hey, why don't you try this new position down at the University of Texas? And I'm like, but it's Texas. They're like, but it's Austin, Texas. I'm like, okay, I can do that. So I applied for that job, and I ended up at UT Austin, and I thought that was my forever job. I'm like, I'm going to do this forever and ever. I love it here. And then what I started doing was starting to do a lot of social justice, starting to advocate for people of color, primarily in work, as there's so few of us backstage. And I was starting to do a lot of national speaking on it. So I was getting a lot of theaters kind of coming in asking, where do I find this person? Where do I find that person? And so one day, sitting there at UT, I got an email from the Guthrie. And I thought it was just another, we need to find someone. Can you help us find it? So I kind of ignored the email. I got up, and they're like, we want you to apply to be our director of production. I'm like, are you sure you have the right David Stewart? Because I'm just for the Guthrie. And they're like, yep, we have the right person. We want you to come up and apply for the job. So I thought it was a lot of window dressing. I thought they were like, hey, let's get the black guy that talks a lot about equity, diversity, and inclusion and just kind of shut up the narrative. But lo and behold, they actually did like me and found me talented and hired me to be their director of production. So I worked for the Guthrie for 3 years, and then decided that I was kind of done. I was done doing that. I had made a lot of amazing friends through USITT that worked for Disney, and I happened to be on the show floor and met up with their recruiter, and she's like, what are you up to? And I'm like, I'm just kind of seeing what's available. She's like, we have a position open, a production management position open, and we haven't opened it up, this position, to anyone outside of Disney in over a decade, and we think you might be a great fit. I'm like, okay, I'll do that. And much like Elisabeth said, it was just an accidental career. So right place, right time, right people, right network. And I put my name in with 400 other people, and I now make magic for Disney.
Awesome. And then all of a sudden you're on a webcast with a bunch of other people.
Exactly. A lot of other people.
Paul, let's go to you next.
Yeah.
We speak a lot about collaboration on the show. Collaboration is a word that is often used. In fact, one of our guests said it's overused, and I think she was shouted down for that. I'm not sure I agree. But collaboration is a word that's used a lot, and it's often talked about between designers or between designer and a director. Collaboration between production manager and everybody else is not discussed very often. So can we talk a little bit about the relationship between the people you work with and who your closest collaborators are through the course of a project?
Yeah, I suppose you could overuse the word collaboration, but you can't overuse the nature of doing it. This is a collaborative art. You can't do it any other way. You're only a part of something. And I suppose that's one reason I've stuck because at doing this, because there's nothing better than being part of something and creating as a unit and finding the balance within that group and finding where you can hold something up or where you're lacking, but who can pick that up. That's one of the things that keeps me doing it. That's at the heart of what we do. For in my world, really a vital collaboration is with the production stage manager, because they're in it. They're in it more than anyone else. I've put my hand to basically, I think, everything in what we do. And the one thing that I don't want to do is be a production stage manager. That's a lot to carry. It's a huge amount that those guys carry. Very special people. I'm not one of them. But I can't do what I do without a close proximity with that person and that pivotal position for the way at Lincoln Center Theatre, the way that we create stuff. That person, it's the first person we talk about after a show has been picked and they have a director. First thing that comes up is who's the production manager? Who's our PSM?
Elisabeth, how about you? What does collaboration mean to you? I guess we can retitle this section.
I mean, it's just keeping all those balls in the air and that conversation and making sure that everybody has what they need. And so for me, it's with the director and the designers, the stage manager, absolutely. The people on the shop floor, the agents that I'm dealing with to get the designers on board. I mean, all of that feels so collaborative. And when you have those good relationships, it doesn't feel difficult. And then it's really about allowing the work to happen and creating that sort of safe space for people to land to do that work. But for me, it's really it's also all the department heads that work at the theater: the technical director, the associate technical director, lighting, props, sound, all of that. It's really making sure that all of that is happening. And then also in my world, I'm constantly collaborating with marketing to make sure they have everything they need. And making sure that everybody has what they need for the development events, but my favorite thing is really that artistic collaboration in the design process and in the tech process of really bringing that to the stage. For me, that's the most important thing.
Sure. And David, how about you at Disney? What is collaboration like there? I mean, you're on the same floor with all of your designers, which is pretty amazing.
It's true, but the kind of the detriment to that is that you kind of get that silo effect where you're like, okay, this is great. Here, my team's right here, and you forget how gigantic the Disney team can be. For instance, when I was building Wonderful World of Animation, which is an animation show at Disney Hollywood Studios, I'm working with a pyro designer and a laser designer, and I have to work with our security partners in the park because we operate, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So there is no downtime to put a show in. We have to go in after the park closed, and then we're in here until 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. So that's when so much of the magic happens, is that when we are doing our overnight. So I have to work with partners like horticulture and security and groundskeepers and people that are here with these gigantic hoses cleaning our streets so that things can be sparkly and beautiful in the morning. So trying to work with all those different partners, and like when we're working with lasers, construction workers can't be on top of roofs because we have to make sure we have safety protocols in place. So we just have so many different partners to work with. So I basically keep a check sheet, like, remember this person, remember that person, remember this person. And on the flip side, it depends on, like I said, it depends on the project. For instance, we were doing the National Association for Black Journalists a couple of summers ago down in Miami, and now we're taking Star Wars down there. So now I have to talk with Lucasfilm and have to get their input about what their intellectual property and how it's going to be presented for this event, or Pixar or Marvel or Fox Studios. There's just a lot of different things we need to do. So it really depends on who we're working for, who our client is. I was fortunate to be the production manager for the reintroduction of the NBA. So the NBA Orlando bubble was my project. So it's like dealing with a whole nother set of clients. So it just, again, it depends on who our clientele is.
We had Otis on the show, who was the lighting designer of the bubble, and he talked a little bit about it. So hopefully we're going to get an episode together talking more about that. So maybe you'll come back on and talk with Otis. And I think one of the sound people we're going to come on too.
Yeah. Nice.
And also we can do a whole episode on Star Wars in wherever you're doing it. Let's do that. That sounds like fun.
Is that for you or for everybody else?
That's maybe for me.
Okay.
Sam, would you like to add anything to that? What's collaboration on your end?
Yeah, We have a little different structure and a little different setup. But the one thing that I approach the job as is we're kind of creating the palette. We're putting the palette up there, and then when the director and the actors show up, they're going to make the art. Okay, as complex or as simple as the sets and the lights and everything else, that's the palette, and then the art comes from the actors. In our situation at Hudson, obviously our chief collaborator, my chief collaborator is Neil Mazzella, who runs the company and who sustained a shop in New York for 40 years and is still sustaining that shop despite a pandemic, I might add. So we're very fortunate in the structure that we have, because we have Neil, and then we have Irene, and then we have Frank Swan, who I mentioned before did the meme. So we have a group of us that work together. Then, it's obviously stage managers are very, very important, because they're the conduit from what's happening in rehearsal to what's coming back into the theater. And once everybody's in the theater, obviously the designers and the director, it's very important that we keep that line of communication open, and that, I feel a need to be very receptive to what they need, and at the same time manage their expectations, because sometimes their expectations might be just a tad beyond reach.
Never.
But,
Impossible.
but all the creatives are very important. It's very important collaboration with them.
Keep it friendly.
Get us to that red carpet.
Yes. Not me. I'm just a webcast host these days. That's what I do. There's no expectations. We're gonna, we're 45 minutes in, and we're finally gonna get to what everyone's probably tuned in for. How the hell are we gonna reopen the American theater and live entertainment? But first, we stopped asking this question a while ago, because at a certain point nobody wanted to actually answer it. And as I've said on the show, I don't want to ask anything that I wouldn't want to answer myself. But a lot has happened, especially lately. So, David, how are you doing? How are you?
It depends on the day. I did feel like I could finally breathe again after this election happened, but I was also kind of shocked and appalled by the response of how the military response to Black Lives Matter protests over the summer versus the insurrection that happened, and just the stark contrast of how we treat our Black and brown bodies in this country versus the white bodies in this country. And so it just is a shocking reminder of where we are and where we aren't in this country. But overall, I am cautiously optimistic these days. Thank you for asking.
Absolutely. Elisabeth, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. I broke my foot this summer, so that didn't help the whole COVID thing. But David, I absolutely agree with just, how appalling so much of everything in the last few weeks has been, and the inequity. And I've been spending a lot of time working with EDI groups, and there's a Seattle Theater Leaders group, and we're all looking at really creating much more equitable workspaces. And I'm doing okay. I'm working. I don't know what I'm doing half the time, but I'm working. What's hardest for me is worrying about all of our staff that we've laid off and what they're doing, and trying to keep in touch with them when I don't have any information to give them. If you had asked us last March and said, do you think in January you're going to be still closed? We were literally like, well, do you think we should cancel the summer show? What do you think?
That used to be one of our questions. Did you think that we would be in this position right now? And some people lie and said yes, but no, most people said no.
Right.
So,
right.
And here we are. Paul, how are you?
Pretty good. It's since the turn of the new year and the impending vaccination push that has begun. Well, it's begun now. We are talking about different kinds of hypotheticals now that are a little less hypothetical than they used to be, and I'm starting to, frankly, miss New York City, because I'm out in the country now. There's really been very little for me to do, of course. And I'm up near Rhinebeck, so I've been crazy renovating a house that we bought the summer before the pandemic to keep my sanity, basically. But I'm excited to get back. You know, I was kind of tired before this, and I was really it's been a long run of a lot of shows.
Yeah.
And this step away has I feel really physically great in that respect, and now I'm starting to miss what I used to do in a bigger way.
That is also a shared sentiment of people we've had on this. Also, we can have a whole episode of people who are renovating their homes who used to do other things like design or manage. So stay tuned. Sam, how about you? How are you doing?
Doing great. I'm hunkered down here in Chelsea. I got my vaccination yesterday.
First day.
It was a great day. It was an inauguration and a vaccination. It was fantastic. Couldn't have been better. I have been back in the theater, into theaters several times. We had just opened Girl from the North Country, and then we were getting ready to load out Inheritance the following week. So we kind of blindly went in and loaded out Inheritance, but after 4 days in there, it was kind of like, what's really happening around us? So we kind of stopped until July. So we loaded that, restored that theater, loaded out Hangman out of the Golden, and then more recently loaded the Minutes out of the Court Theater. The good thing is it gave us a sense of how people were going to react, how crews and the street and the isolation needed to be, and protocols went into place, for the crews. That were very well thought out and very well observed. Everybody was very cooperative. I mean, from the guys on the truck to, everybody in the theater. There was isolation, there was masking, there were no testing yet, but, all those things. So that's heartening that everybody's ready to, do what they have to do in order to get back into it. And now we are indeed making the plan of, okay, what's the next step? Once we really need to reopen, what's that all going to entail? But at least we've had some experience getting back in there and knowing that at least the theaters are standing and we can do the job that we have to do with the new restrictions and protocols that have to be in place, no doubt about it.
Which is a great segue to the next question. But before I get to that, a more important question from Buist Bickley. When does Paul play those bagpipes? So
next time I see you, Buist. Next time I see you.
Next time I drive through Rhinebeck, I'll keep my ear out for the bagpipes in the distance.
So once live entertainment is allowed to resume, theaters will most likely have been dormant for well over a year. Just like what you mentioned, Sam, about some things that have to happen before that does happen. What does have to happen for things to open, Sam, in your view?
Well, from our end, we're working on this, trying to get the the scheduling together in order to figure it out. One of the big things in the theaters that I've been into, with just shows sitting there, is just going to be the cleaning of everything, because everything has just been, sitting there. So cleaning, I think, is, going to be a big part of it. We have equipment that's been sitting in there for a year that hasn't been turned on. We have chain motors that are out of certification that need to be replaced. So there's going to be a couple of weeks of just getting in the theater and making sure everything works, making sure everything's safe, which is a very important factor, because as you all know, there's a lot of heavy gear running around in the theaters, like on Ain't Too Proud. Maybe we got 26, 27, automation pieces. All those have to be tested. Did the wheels get flat by just sitting there? So many things have to be gone through. All the perishables, like on a show like Girl from the North Country, they eat constantly in that show. They're constantly eating. What are the equity protocols going to be in terms of that? And what are the perishables that exist? So there's so many things. We have gone in and looked at costumes. We have gone in and to make sure that things are still, holding together. And in most of the theaters, they're holding together very, very well.
Mhm.
But I think it's going to be a couple of weeks at least of getting in there just to get things geared up. So and then doing the teching with the cat and making sure that we have replacements. Some people have left the business, so making sure we have replacements for everybody, and they're all at the top of their game. And I think everybody will be very conscientious and at the top of their game when they come back. Because so
David, how about you guys at Disney? You're still working, so you're not doing live performances, I take it, even though you're in Florida and that is happening down there.
Yeah, we've been open since August, and so it was a matter of how we were going to come back, and we've come back in so many different ways. The first way we came back was through broadcast. We have a broadcast division, so we have something called Disney Dreamers Academy, which is a very popular program. And we had to do that live this year. So I was fortunate to be a part of that. And doing kind of a virtual conference, we had to do that. That was interesting, kind of doing that, having a DJ live, but web streamed. So we did that. And a lot of distance entertainment. So we do these things called cavalcades, where we get these nice cars, convertible cars, and we put our VIPs, Mickey, Minnie, Donald, Daisy, Chip and Dale, into these cars, and then we just kind of have them go around the park. And the idea is not to do kind of a sit-down parade or a fireworks show, because we don't want people to congregate, even though we have amazing safety protocols here. I think I feel safer in our parks than I do at Target, quite honestly.
Sure.
And reducing, I just opened up something called Chef Mickey's, where we have the VIPs. Instead of sitting and doing photos, meet and greets, what they do now is they socially distance going through the restaurant, and all the autograph cards are already pre-made and at everybody's desk. So we're just looking at, or everybody's table. So we're just looking at different ways to kind of socially distance, but still bring entertainment to our guests.
Great.
When you said Chippendales at first, my Vegas mind was like, oh, Chippendales?
Of course it was. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm in Vegas. I mean, I see
That's
the sign everywhere.
Can't help it. Paul, how about you? Lincoln Center.
A thing that's on my mind a lot. I mean, being production managers, we're kind of in the front trenches when it comes to physically being in these spaces again, because we're all the physical stuff. But a thing that I'm spending a lot of time trying to think about is how to bring together everyone's different experience of this, of what we've all heard so many things. We've all been told lots of different things from different corners about how to deal with this and how it works, and new variants, and lots of information. And the folks that we're going to be working very closely with on the stages, we've all got this information separate from one another. We spend a lot of time together usually, so we're all talking about the same stuff most of the time, but we're now learning all this stuff in separation. Mm-hmm. So really important to me is how we come together to make a coherent, collaborative plan with official information, but also, leaning on each other as we always have done. We have to still do it that way. We just have a different set of circumstances now. I mean, it blows my mind thinking about, we're constant motion, 8 shows a week. We're constant motion. Everything's moving all the time. Nothing sits still for more than a week. This is 18 months. It's going to be 18 months. So what the hell happened? I have no idea.
Right.
So there's a lot, as Sam said, there's a bunch of time.
There's a lot to dig out.
There's a lot of digging out going on. So I think we got a good couple of months of slowly turning.
Right. And we don't even know what that date is. A couple of months from a date that doesn't exist at the moment.
Not yet. No.
And I will say, and Elisabeth, we're going to get to you in a second. Sam was talking about potential COVID protocols when we return. I've spoken to theater makers and producers and general managers and directors who won't restart if there are restrictions like that. They're not going to change their staging. They're going to wait until they can come back and have people stand next to each other. And I don't know, who knows what's going to be.
I certainly believe there's going to be a post-vaccine. There's still going to be residual things that we're going to, I think,
for a little bit.
The change that's happened, how long it lasts, we shall see. But there's no not doing a certain amount of this stuff anymore.
Yeah.
One of the things it reminded me of when I have gone back in the theaters, it's those movies back in the 50s where they were having the tests out in the Mojave Desert of the atomic bomb, and you'd walk into a house and there would be a cigarette lit and food.
Yeah.
But the only thing in there were dummies, were mannequins.
Sure. Yeah.
And it was kind of eerie in that respect because everything is just what it was, except it's different.
As opposed to the usual dummies that are in there. Sorry, I can joke about myself. As I've said, there's a tech table in the middle of New York with my script open to page 75, I think, or something like that. Ready to. Maybe we'll go back to that. But actually, that set. Speaking of walking back in, they walked in and the set is rotten. They actually had to take the set out because it mildewed or molded or something. It was all rope. So. Everybody check your scenery. Elisabeth, how about you? What's your take out there? It's in Seattle.
Well, the first thing we have to do, and we're working on doing it, is take the Jitney set off of our stage, which has been there since it closed.
Yeah.
But, for us, all of that. And like Sam, I'm totally writing down oh my God, chain motors. Do we have that on our list? It's all of the things. But really what we're looking at so much of the rep is wherever we are when we come back, what is the dressing room situation going to be like? What is it going to be like on stage? How do you rehearse? How do you do costume fittings? And then the other question is, what percentage of people will we be able to have in the theater? Will they be masked? I'm assuming they'll be masked. And when will our audience be ready to come back? Because we're a subscription house and we count on single tickets, and it's just that thought of I can't wait to be back in a theater, but I'm also I'm not ready to be back in a theater, and trying to figure that out with the schedule and all of those safety protocols and figuring out, we have a long, narrow lobby, and how do we socially distance if we have to do that? And we finally stopped. We were working on the reopening plan for the unions and for ourselves all summer. And we finally said, we need to just take a breath, because everything we're planning now is going to be different when we come back. So we have to be ready for everything you might possibly have to do, and also be ready to turn on a dime and have it be something else.
Yeah.
Yep. That's what's so frustrating and hard.
So knowing that, obviously this is all still a moving target. Elisabeth, let's stick with you. And this is an economic question. This question is more about economics and safety. Do you think project will be scaled back? Smaller cast, less scenery, fewer costumes, less new technology and lighting and sound. Do you think that there will be a push to take it easy on the shops and the system in order to because of the financial burden?
Yeah, I mean, we have the financial burden of having been closed with not a whole lot of revenue, which impacts our upcoming budget. But we also have, how many people will it be safe to have on our stage? Are we going to do a 25-person musical? I don't know if we can. And what we want to do, and we're in conversation about this all the time. I think I've run 15 different calendars and budgets for next season.
Sure.
But we really want to focus on the artists, the playwrights, the actors, the directors, the designers, and not necessarily spend all of our money on the materials that it takes to fill the Bagley Wright stage, but really focus in. And so, I have to think, the budgets we're running are lower than our last two or 3 years.
Sure.
Probably lower than the last 7 years or 10 years. But it's about finding the way to support the art without it feeling like you're cutting back. We're not It'd be like, you can't have any walls. You can have everything else, but you can't have any walls.
Just do it all with lights.
We have to figure out how we tell that story and still make it look lush. But, when we talk about plays of scale, there's scale and grandeur of scenery and size of cast, but there's also the impact of the play itself.
Sure.
And so those are all the
absolutely.
conversations we're having right now.
What's funny is that I realized that I was scheduled to do a show at Seattle Rep, and I didn't even think about that when we asked you to come on. So I guess this is a bad time to ask if I have a job in the fall.
Oh, yeah.
I really, this is a total coincidence.
Yeah, well, I know, and I'm so happy to talk to you, but we finally just stopped reaching out because we kept sending agents. Well, we think we're going to do it in the fall. We think we might do it in the winter. So finally we just said, let's just stop. Everybody's going crazy. But now we're at that point where now we've got to get those offers out because everyone's going to have a million offers to try to get all of those shows up on the stage. So, and again, it's like we have to move forward knowing that we are hoping that we'll be able to come back next season, but not knowing when. Yeah. But we have to get people lined up. And I've done, multiple calendars of the same season, just talking to directors and their availability. So,
yep. Without passing this around to everyone, does anyone want to add anything to this question?
Well, I think shows. I'm sorry. Go ahead, David.
Oh, sorry. Thanks. I think there will be, out of a necessity of some of the things that have come out of the We See You Wide America Theater document as well, and reduction or elimination of a 6-day work week. I think there will have to be, if it starts to be a nationwide adoption of some of these things that are happening. As a matter of fact, there's a talk about it at USATT next week. Look it up about the 10 out of 12 conversation. So I think that there'll be a reduction of scale as well.
Yeah, and we're building that into our budget, making sure that we can look at what is the tech time going to be. Can we do 5-day weeks? What are the things that actually, we've had time to breathe and say, you know what, we're exhausted because we've been killing people with our schedule, and there's a better way to do it. And to really we're working on getting those numbers into the budget, even if it's cut back, so that it's not, we can't afford to make those changes, so we'll just kick that down the road.
Yes.
I mean, I think one thing that's going to happen, the new shows being developed now will certainly be developed with that in mind. The shows that exist, I think, are going to have to exist in, closer to the way that they exist now. But new shows, I mean, there's been a lot of creativity. A lot, Julianne Boyd up in the Berkshires did The Godspell. Isaac out in LA at the Geffen did The Magic Show, which was brilliant, a virtual brilliant show. Christine Jones, who has Theater for One, they did virtual Theater for Ones, which were also specially written and specially designed for, so if they're doing it virtually, it can be done in reality, physically. And there will be a lot of that creativity. The great thing is there's so much creativity that's just channeling in and just pent up.
Yeah, exactly.
In the corral and release everyone.
Exactly. So this is what we do. I mean, the pressure is coming from a different direction now.
Right.
We haven't done it in light of a pandemic before, but we've done it in light of other things. This is what we do, and we'll overcome.
Well, and combining, to Elisabeth's point, and also maybe to David's point, when we come back, everyone will have offers, and if the work week changes, if the amount of time you can spend on a show changes, we will all be spending more time on a show. So there will be more jobs to go around. If, because of the 10 out of 12, because of the compressed amount of time we work, we can take more shows. If that changes, if we actually redo this, then there's going to be more design jobs. So maybe that's also a good thing as a byproduct.
Yeah. And I also wonder, when will we ever go back to in-person design meetings?
Yeah,
I mean, you want to be in the same room, you want to have that, but now we've discovered these wonderful, like Zoom, where it's like we actually can get the design process moving faster because we don't have to have everybody in the same city. We can just set up a meeting,
that's true, and bring it up. I miss the in-person. Now no one has meetings anymore, but in the early COVIDs, we were doing a lot of Zoom meetings, and it was driving me nuts. Yeah. And I will say, I actually did have an actual in-person meeting where we were all separate, sitting at a board, a giant table. There were 3 of us in the room, and needed to look at the same drawings. So we ended up joining a Zoom meeting, even though we were all in the same room. It was like the most ridiculous thing.
Because you could stand next to each other.
Yeah, right.
Well, we're about a little over time, but we're gonna push on through it. It's time for Jeff's Roundtable Rapid Fire. All right, so this is gonna go super quick answers. Jeff is gonna be answering the questions, and the order is gonna be Elisabeth, Sam. Wait, I just sent it to you.
I got it. Great. Okay. We're going to start with Elisabeth. Elisabeth, favorite thing to do when you're not working?
Spend time with my daughter and read.
Sam.
Enjoying reading, and when the weather's nice, I like to go out and take a stroll around the links.
Yes. Paul.
Watching cricket. I have returned to the love of my sporting life, cricket.
Amazing. David.
Watching TikToks with my kids.
Nice.
Excellent. David, sticking with you, a skill needed to do what you do.
Patience.
Yep. Paul.
Empathy.
Great. Sam.
What David said.
Elisabeth.
Listening.
Yes. Elisabeth, sticking with you, best advice you were given by anyone.
When I took over this job from stage managing, which is so focused on getting to opening night, I couldn't get anything done. And I went to my bosses and said, I can't get anything done on time. And they said, you will be behind your schedule for the rest of your career.
There you go.
To know
that. Sam.
I think the best advice was, don't let the moment stop you. You've got to work through it and get through it. And so you just have to plow through it.
Paul.
When you go out drinking, just pretend to be drunk. Don't.
That's good advice. David.
My dad says you have 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth. Use them in that ratio.
David, sticking with you, does anything, you've been doing this for a long time, does anything still surprise you?
Every day.
Amazing. Yeah. Paul.
It better do. That's all I can say.
Sam.
I think that's why we do this, because every day is that surprise.
That's right. Elisabeth.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, Elisabeth, something you wish you knew now, something you wish you knew, something you know now that you wish you knew at the start of your career. How about that?
Just keep going.
Sam.
I'm 76 years old. If I don't know it, I can't remember what I did
too long ago
then than what I know now.
Paul.
Just don't be afraid of conflict.
Yeah. David.
Accounting and budgeting.
Yes. David, sticking with you, what is your favorite ride at Disney?
Rise of the Resistance, Star Wars.
Amazing. Paul, do you have a favorite ride at Disney? You don't
I've
have to.
been, I have no idea.
It's okay. Sam, do you have a favorite ride at Disney?
I like Raiders of the Lost Ark, but I ran into a guy who said, well, that's no longer there. They're turning it down to put something new in. And I discovered the new thing that they put in was Star Wars, which fortunately Hudson was able to build some of. So
you
Sure
love
did.
Star Wars.
my favorite new ride is going to be Star Wars.
Can't wait. Elisabeth.
Pirates of the Caribbean and Peter Pan.
Elisabeth, first thing you do when you walk into work?
Walk through the scene shop and say hi to everybody. Go upstairs, turn on my computer and grab some coffee.
Sam.
Wherever it is, I always say hi to as many people as I can, whether it's at the shop, in the theater, at the office.
Paul.
Do my rounds.
Yeah. David.
Make French press coffee for me and my office mate.
That sounds great. David, one innovation. An innovation.
Come
that
on down.
The way you work. No, really. That's why I wake up in the morning now. One innovation that's changed the way you work, other than computers.
I don't know if it's an innovation, but I think the focus on inclusion these days is heading in the right direction.
That is an innovation. Well, maybe not innovation, but yeah, sure.
It's been around for hundreds of years.
It's been around, and you've been talking about it longer than anybody. So thank you for that. Sam,
I think
or Paul.
Innovation. Well, really good scooters for getting around the city.
Yeah, great. Sam.
I'm going to go along with David again. The whole diversity, the approach, with the diversity that everyone is embracing.
Yeah.
Well, not everyone, but hopefully soon more people will embrace is extremely important.
Elisabeth.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing, and it's the fact that after talking about it for so many years that like on a national level, this conversation is happening, and I think accountability is starting to be formed.
Yep. Elisabeth, something you've learned about yourself over the last few months that have surprised you?
That I really love being at home. I'm never home.
Yeah. Sam.
That I can find ways to keep things fresh and keep things alive while the whole world is changing around, so that when we go back into the world, it can get back to where it was.
Yeah. Paul.
Getting used to being at home. You get in we all know we've been in the rhythm of doing shows, and you need to get. It's been great to get used to being at home again.
Yeah. And David.
I've learned how to shoot a firearm, and I'm an amazingly good shot.
Ooh. That's the most.
You're on my side.
I know you're on my exactly. David, where do you want to travel first when things fully reopen and it's totally safe?
Yeah, not far. I just want to get back to the beaches. We have beautiful beaches down here.
Cool. Paul.
I need to get back to England to see my family.
Yeah. Sam.
Tuscany.
So many great things. Elisabeth.
New York and Colorado to see my dad.
Come on by.
Me too.
Elisabeth, what do you miss most about live entertainment being shut down? There's a ton of things, but what do you miss most?
I miss most first preview, standing at the back of the theater and watching the audience watch this show for the first time and being part of that audience. Great. Sam.
I miss being able to tell the director, it's fixed, it's done, it's fixed, don't talk about it.
Paul.
Yeah, standing in the back of a theater and feeling the oneness.
Yeah. David.
In-person interaction with my team.
Yep. Well, that's the end of our rapid fire section, but we're going to ask a couple more questions and maybe we can continue to do a rapid fire. What do we think? We're well over time. Drew, where do you want to go next? We should have talked about this very second. I apologize for that.
No worries. A common sentiment from our guests has been that before COVID, they worked nonstop, often sacrificing personal time. When things get back to normal, are you going to go full steam ahead, or are you going to still kind of pace yourself and allow time for family and just kind of a slower pace? Elisabeth?
I think we have to go slower. This is part of that same conversation of more humane practices. But I'm trying to figure. I live 35 miles out from the city, and so I may not commute in every day. I may work from home and do both. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what the theater will look like, but we have to change the culture.
Right. And how about you, Sam?
I think our approach will need to be more thoughtful. I think, that might translate into slower, but I think it'll more purposeful, more thoughtful.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Paul?
Yes. We've done 10 out of 12s for forever because that's the way it was done before. I think that phrase is is going to get some serious attention, because that's the way we do it.
Can I just say the term 10 out of 12 is for some people. The term 19 out of 24 is for us.
It absolutely is the term 19 out of 24. So I'd be surprised if there wasn't a change on that front, because I think that's the one. I mean, there's a lot of things we can all agree on, but the term 10 out of 12 is something that, most people think is horrible. Even lighting designers who get to work, all those hours. Sorry, David, your turn. What do you think?
I think I was fortunate to work for a company that actually encourages it a lot. As a matter of fact, Disney changed the term sick time into well-being time, and I think that's a very healthy approach to our humanity.
Yeah. I think it'll slowly ramp up, and maybe in 15 years from now, we're going to be pulling our hair out again, but it'll be a while before it gets there.
Hair?
But, so you're ahead of the curve. And I will say, I'm not going to out anyone, but people have come on, the show and answered that question. Like, yes, I take it. And then, they call me the next day. Like, who am I kidding? Like, as soon as I get that offer, I'm taking that offer, even if that means I'm doing 4 shows at a time. So we'll see what actually happens a few years from now. But for all of us, it's absolutely true. The time at home has been a lot nicer. All right, racing to the end, and I think we have some pictures to share as we go through this. Yeah. Elisabeth, work aside, what has COVID life been from you? Are there any hobbies, cooking anything that surprised you?
I didn't think I was going to jump into the whole baking thing, but I totally jumped into the sourdough world and some berry buckle and some, I just started cooking. My daughter was home from college. There's some pumpkin whoopie pies because, you got to just try everything. So yeah, that's what we did for much of the summer.
Yep. Sam.
Like I said, I'm here in Chelsea. I have a comfortable place to be. I have a backyard. I have a dog. So, he's my age, and we
That's great. David.
I joined a gun club and enjoy going out and learning how to shoot and how to get better at that.
Oh my God, that is a serious picture.
Look at that.
Yes, it is.
Cool. Yes, I'll be on your side. Thank you. Paul.
At the new place, renovating like crazy. I built a spiral staircase out of a tree trunk that my son and I cut. There was a dead tree, and we cut it down when we first got here, and then I turned it into a spiral staircase.
Do we have a picture of that?
No.
Come on. Yeah. But real fun is that my wife Garrett and I have put together a glamping tent site on our land, which we've had lots of happy campers come up before the season changed, with return campers too. It's on Tenter. I'm not plugging it, but
you can plug it.
Plug it.
Plug away.
Plug Hill on Tenter is pretty excellent, man.
My
wife takes the lion's share of the creativity there. It was all her vision.
I love it. What a great idea. And so it's not all just theater people. It's the whole world.
General public.
Thank God. Are there any other pictures, Drew, that we were?
Yeah, I mean, we've got this old one of David that he's shared.
Kid and play.
Wow. Little house party.
That's right. All my hair just moved down.
Elizabeth sent.
Oh, this is Sam's. Oh yeah, that secret garden went to the White House. We were very proud of our red ribbons. It was just starting.
Oh wow.
Backstage with Perry Klein.
Oh my God, yeah.
Right.
Max, yeah.
I know some of those guys.
Sam sent in some photos.
I'm the one on the right with all the hair. The Chicago company of Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope. Yeah, and if you look in the middle there, don't pay any attention to the guy on top giving everyone the bird. In the middle there, the guy, the young-looking guy with more hair than he has now. That was Australia for Meatloaf's tour, which I was on for a year and a half.
Wow.
Is the guy on the top Meatloaf?
Yeah, that's me. That's me. Being very tastefully objectionable.
Did we not get Paul's pictures? I guess we didn't get Paul's
pictures. Sorry, Paul, I didn't get them.
I just sent them to you, Jeff, and I should.
No. We'll bring them up next week.
Yeah.
Okay. Elisabeth, what advice do you have for young people who want to do what you do?
There's so many people are like, if there's anything else you can ever think of doing, do it, because theater is impossible. I always say the opposite. If this is what you want to do, find a way to do it. Whatever it is, just do it. Just figure out how to keep at it and live the dream.
David.
Keep your eyes open to other perspectives, some cultural competencies.
Sam.
Don't turn anything down, out of hand. Take the gig. If I hadn't done children's theater in Rochester, I wouldn't have met the people that got me to Broadway, and I wouldn't have met the people that got me on tour, and I wouldn't have met Neil, and I wouldn't be still sitting here doing this business 52 years later.
Yep.
There it is in summation. Paul.
Find a way to hang around.
Mm.
Just find a way to hang around, and it'll happen.
Thank you all so much. Is there anything that any of you want to add or retract or clarify before we say goodbye to everyone? I don't think there's anything to retract, right? Sam.
Great meeting everyone and talking with
lovely.
Yes.
Hopefully we'll do a face-to-face at some point.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Paul, I will show your pictures next week. I promise.
Just Just make sure you show the one that says Tenter on the tent. And
we're gonna start the show. I'm not even kidding. We're starting with
Rhinebeck, New York.
Rhinebeck, Tenter, Rhinebeck. Done.
Yeah, I will say thank you, everybody. Right now, I'm gonna take Elisabeth's advice and use it on my wife and say, when I show up late for dinner, I'm gonna tell her that I'm gonna be late for the rest of my life. We'll see how that goes.
Just be kind.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
There are comments. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I might not be here next week if I say that.
That's right. That was about right.
There are comments. Our guests can go look on Facebook or YouTube. There are definitely some comments that maybe you want to answer, but we'll get in there eventually, and maybe we can answer some too. But in the meantime, and by the meantime I mean a half hour longer than we anticipated. Thank you all very much. Drew, anything else?
No, thank you, everybody. We really appreciate it. We will be back next Sunday with lighting designers. The weekend of Super Bowl, we're going to take off. So next, we don't want to steal the NFL's ratings. I mean, come on.
No, come on.
So thank you again, everybody. It's been great, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, bye, everybody.